Facebook is fighting back against Australia's proposed media law. The draft law would require Facebook and Google to share revenue for featuring content from local news media.
Facebook is making a last-ditch effort to force Australia's hand on its new media law. The social media giant plans to block Australian users from sharing local and international news on Facebook and Instagram if the legislation is approved. It's up against tough rhetoric.
Australia makes laws that advance our national interest, and we won't be responding to coercion or heavy-handed tactics wherever they come from.
Facebook says while it supports the government's initiative to help struggling news organizations, it believes the proposed media law is unfair. That's because it allows news outlets to charge any price they want. The company has pointed out that it would be forced to pay media organizations for content which is voluntarily posted on its platforms. And the price it would pay ignores the value that it brings to publishers for hosting their content for free. Facebook says news content only represents a fraction of what users see on social media feeds and is not a significant source of revenue. Google has also attacked Australia's new law, warning it would affect search and YouTube features. The draft legislation has yet to be approved by Parliament, but the government has vowed to press ahead with the plan.
We want a sustainable media environment, and key to that is to see payment for original journalistic content. And so we're committed to these reforms. We won't be bullied, no matter how big the international company is, no matter how powerful they are, no matter how valuable they are.
Google and Facebook account for more than 70% of the annual digital ad spending in Australia. Internet and media companies have battled over similar issues in other countries, but Australia's law represents the most expansive reform between tech giants and media outlets.
Well, for more on this, let's speak to Mr. Wu Jin Lee, founder and managing director of Glue Public Relations. Good evening, Mr. Wu. So Facebook claims that this new law is unfair, but they also say that it's going to hurt media organizations. How's that going to happen?
I think what Facebook is trying to say is that they are diverting traffic to the websites of media organizations. And therefore, they feel that, they're helping the media organizations to get readership, and yet they're penalized for it. I think that's the argument they're trying to say.
So could the decision then to remove news content actually backfire on Facebook?
Well, it's a bit of a chicken and egg thing, right? I mean, Facebook and Google, they are really kind of the pipes that is moving content around the world, right? And the news organizations are the creators of this content. Without a doubt, where Facebook and Google is today, it's largely has come a lot, largely been contributed a lot by the original content that news organizations around the world have created. And of course, the cost of hiring the newsroom and paying for staff is borne by the news organizations. Now, the problem is the traditional advertising revenues of media organizations have shifted a lot away from display ads and TV ads and newspaper ads, largely to online space. And Facebook and Google, they are the king of online marketing and digital marketing. So that's why there's such an issue.
So, Mr. Wu, if this law, this ban were to become law, practically speaking, how could Facebook possibly enforce this kind of a news sharing ban? So there are two ways that people put news on Facebook. One could be like you and me, right? On our own private Facebook, we would share news articles. So I think that is one of the ways that news gets there. The other way is that the news organizations themselves, they have a Facebook page, right? Like CNA and SPH, they have their own Facebook page, and they use that to push their news articles to their readers as well. And it's also used to form a community. So I think what Facebook might do is actually to block access to both the personal and the corporate Facebook of the newspaper companies as well, the media companies.
At the moment, this is sort of about Facebook and Australia, but what sort of wider implications could there be for the wider region?
I think we are at a very significant crossroads, right? I mean, we know that the media, the content, the good content from the media has contributed to the growth of Facebook and Google. However, the traditional revenues that used to come to these traditional media organizations has shifted away to Facebook and Google. A lot of the contribution comes to the content that these news organizations created, right, out of their own pocket. I think Australia government is being very brave, right, for being the first to really challenge this. And it's interesting that they're challenging them on a competition law, antitrust law, instead of the more traditional route of copyright. I think it's complex. I'm not sure if they could actually use antitrust laws to effect this. Because antitrust law usually requires some kind of abuse of a dominant position, or like people entering into a cartel, right, to control prices. Technically, Facebook and Google are not in the same business as the news organization. However, it is a fact that the revenue models, the bread and butter of news organizations have now shifted to Facebook and Google, right? As marketeers have moved away from what we used to call context-based advertising to audience-based advertising. Today, any company can create their own content and use Google and Facebook and push their content to targeted audiences. In the past, we relied on newspapers and TV channels and radio channels, and the media would tell the advertisers that, look, we reach out to this group of readers, this group of listeners. So if you publish on my platform, you can reach out to them. But the growth of the internet and particularly Google and Facebook, they have taken advantage of this shift where anyone can push content to the right audience. The bigger implications is Australia can't do this alone. I think if the news organizations around the world really want to effect a change, I think they have to band together, right? I think it's not a question of what is fair. I think it's a question of the survival of the objective news media. What happens if objective news media die, right? If there is no middle ground, I think we could be in a situation where money will rule the world, and the advertisers pay for the content they want to push out. It is important that objective news organizations still surviving. So I think it's a matter of both coming together for the betterment of both parties.
All right, and thank you very much for your thoughts this evening, Mr. Wu Jin Lee, founder and managing director of Glue Public Relations.